I will be talking about our Peace Gardens electrification project. And we can go to the next slide for a little bit of a background. So this is a small home in North Oakland, built in, I think, the late 1800s. It's a pretty old house that was subdivided into 5 units and a detached ADU. So each unit has its own kitchen, and most of them have their own bathroom. There are only 2 units that share a bathroom. So for 6 units total. The Northern California Land Trust is a community land trust. So like Ruth was describing, we prioritize community co-ownership. So this is a limited equity cooperative that is resident managed. And in the next slides, I'll talk a little bit more about the resident engagement, but this loan or this electrification project was part of a larger rehab project. We received about $300,000 from the city of Oakland in a health and safety loan. And the residents highly prioritized energy efficiency upgrades. So the electrification scope was added to the project after the repair scope was developed. And so to fill this gap, we took out an additional $194,000 loan to cover the remaining scope items. Next slide, please. So the residents were very heavily involved from the project from day one, which was great for us. The Northern California Land Trust is trying to decarbonize all of our portfolio by 2030. And to do that, we've had to plan a lot of resident engagement and community meetings. So this project was really an excellent first project because the residents were already on board with these energy efficiency upgrades. And they actually acquired some of the funding to support the energy efficiency upgrades. So they coordinated $25,000 or $30,000 actually really in grant opportunities to install the solar. They already had established relationships with the solar contractor and some of our vendors, and they were willing to try out these new technologies and adapt to electrification. This was also an occupied rehab, which has its pros and cons. Since the house is heavily resident managed, they acted kind of like almost like superintendents on the site, and they could communicate any inconsistencies, and they were really involved with the whole process. So they understood exactly how things were supposed to be installed and where. So it was really nice having those folks on the ground to let us know what was happening. And then, of course, with occupied rehabs is an extra layer of complexity to coordinate all of the different installations. We ended up replacing flooring, cabinets, windows. So there was a lot of coordination and scheduling involved, and it did ultimately end up in a few delays in the project when we couldn't get access to a unit or a resident was not comfortable with proceeding to the next step of the rehab process. Next slide, please. So this was the scope of the electrification portion of the rehab. Now it was a larger rehab, like I said, that included a lot of upgrades. And in one of the earlier slides, I mentioned that there hadn't been a significant upgrade since the 90s. So there are a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of foundation issues. So that was the bulk of the health and safety loan. But this was the additional electrification scope that was mostly added after the original rehab scope. So we installed induction stoves, mini split heat pump heating. They previously had just the gas wall furnaces, so no air conditioning. We added that with the heat pumps. We added heat pump water heaters, upgraded their appliances, upgraded the electrical service, solar panels, windows, and some building envelope improvements like insulation and a roof. And we actually ended up not doing wall insulation, but roof insulation, crawl space insulation, and then a new roof to support the new solar system, as well as lighting upgrades. So the project is actually closing out right now. So this total cost is pretty accurate, but might not be comprehensive. and it results in an in-unit cost of a little bit over 30,000. Now, in our other properties, we've found that this is actually quite low, and they're closer to like the 50, 60K per unit cost. But this was all kind of pre-COVID, and we had some good pricing locked in. So things are definitely increasing. Next slide, please. We were able to take advantage of layering some incentives. So we worked really closely with AEA to receive the LIWIP and Bambi rebates. We also received a MASH rebate for the solar, and really all of the solar was supported by the Hammond Foundation Solar Moonshot Grant, which was a grant that the residents acquired previous to my involvement in the project. So that helped significantly. And then once we were in the project, we were kind of continuously adding scope items to take advantage of these rebates. So we saw additional financing through our established grant or partnerships in grants to cover the induction stoves. And then also we decided to switch from a coin operated laundry system to high efficiency heat pump dryers and high efficiency washers. So we were able to use the Spark Micro Grant to purchase that equipment. So the total incentives were about $80,000, and we still had a gap of about $112, or $112,000, which we used the Green and Healthy Home financing to cover that. Next. So there were some pretty obvious benefits. So solar panels offset about 50% of the energy consumed on the property, but the solar design happened, or it was permitted before we added a lot of the electrification measures to the scope. So I think we sized it probably at the maximum that we could get, but I think we didn't size it totally properly for the additional electrical load. The residents now have air conditioning. A lot of the heaters did not work, so now we have a more reliable system, and installing the insulation and new windows helped to increase the comfort and reduce a lot of the noise in the area. And then also with the electrical upgrade, we had to bring it up to code. So the whole system is modernized. There's more outlets, larger electrical capacity, and it just kind of makes more sense for how people are using energy these days. Next slide. One of the big problems with this project was from PG&E, like I think others have mentioned. So there was some sort of glitch in the billing statement after we received our permission to operate for the solar system, and our billing, we have not been transferred to the correct billing rate. So we are being overcharged for our energy, and it is an issue that started in December. It has not been resolved to this day, and I will probably get on the phone with them again after this call to try to sort things out. But that has been really, really disappointing, especially to the residents who pay the energy bill. They were expecting a lot more bill savings, and right now we're just we are seeing a reduction on the utility bills after switching to electric. This is just after 6 months of benchmarking, so it's not a great amount of data, but we are definitely disappointed with how PG&E is handling things, and we hope that gets resolved soon. Another point is that the electrification scope was added after we realized that we could receive additional funding. So a lot of the electrification scope was actually shaped by the incentives available through LIWIP and Bambi. But because it wasn't added in the beginning, it created a few delays, and then we were also not able to to add a lot of that scope to the city loan. And we had to kind of scramble at the last minute to secure more funding, but luckily Green and Healthy Homes, the Bay Area pilot from Block Power and Revalue IO were both really helpful in getting us that additional funding. And then again, like I mentioned before, the solar panels were not correctly sized for the additional electricity loads. So we're seeking additional resiliency and solar to kind of like offset the additional load. And then, of course, the regional programs are amazing, but in this project, I think they cover like 20% of the electrification project, and other projects it's about 15 to 20%. And it is definitely helpful, but it's not quite enough of an incentive to go totally electric versus just replacing like in kind for a lot of these projects. And I want to touch again on the resiliency. So the residents are really interested in battery storage, but we are still trying to figure out how to make this work in terms of the financing. It's also quite a complicated process. So we've been trying to find some technical assistance to help us determine what is the best way to install battery storage on an existing solar system. Next slide. And that's it. So these are some of the resources to the funding sources that we received, and our website as well. And I think I went a little bit under time. So if you have any questions, just please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Dana. There was a question by Tom for the Green and Healthy Homes financing loan program. I don't see that in here, but maybe you could follow up with him on that. And then, so at this time, oh yeah, go ahead.
So the Green and Healthy Homes financing was, it's an established program, but we participated in a pilot program for the Bay Area. So I would, the link to Revalue IO, they were the, like the providers of that, or the program providers basically that we worked with. So I would go through their link if you are in the Bay Area, but I can also find the Green and Healthy Homes link for other regions.